Hi, I'm Moshe Katz, Chairman of the Board of the Milwaukee Jewish Federation. On behalf of our board and my partner, Miriam Rosenzweig, President and CEO of the Milwaukee Jewish Federation, I want to thank you all for gathering today on Yom HaZikaron. I want to share with you an essay written by Yitzhak Sadeh, the founder of the Palmach and later the IDF. He writes in Pathways to Valor. Heroism is not the pinnacle of achievement. It is a pathway towards a goal, a path that allows for no shortcuts. Like all paths, it has its branches, and sometimes those branches lead downwards. The way of valor is ultimately a process of purification. The true path always leads in one direction, to the top of a mountain. We try to find the path to heroism for ourselves, despite the risk of falling off course, of falling into the abyss. Let us note that the essence of heroism is not bravery, but rather a readiness to sacrifice oneself. Heroism can manifest itself even in the coward, so long as he is willing to make such a sacrifice. Indeed, true valor reveals itself in how we live our lives each day. We normally associate the term heroism with those in the military, for understandable reasons. Is not a prerequisite for a soldier the willingness to offer the ultimate sacrifice? This, however, is far from the only pathway to the pinnacle of valor. It may be a pathway that we realize, but recall that there are thousands of trails to the top of that mountain. Heroism takes precedent over all moral values, and that the sacrifice that it demands is not a cruel or selfish one, but is rather the ultimate form of giving. At its core, heroism is the love of the other. In these days, most trying times in our memory, remember all the heroes in our lives. Those who have fallen in the IDF, those who are victims of terror, those who are today the heroes, helping us fight this terrible fight we're in now. Again, thank you all for coming.
Hello, I'm Joe Castle, Board Chair at the Harry and Rose Samson Family Jewish Community Center, and thank you for joining us for Yom HaZikaron, Israeli Memorial Day. Together, we'll remember and honor those who have died in service to the State of Israel from the days when Israel was just a dream to today. I am struck that the expression of Yom HaZikaron is so very different from our American Memorial Day, where we might have picnics and barbecues and furniture sales. In contrast, Israelis observe from sunset to sunset, with the sounds of sirens and the stills of the streets, an active reminder of the people behind the names of a list that sadly grows longer each year. Maybe it's because the act of freedom remains hard in Israel, because the violence and the cost of that violence remains too high. But I hope today we don't just honor those who have paid the ultimate sacrifice for Jewish freedom. I hope we also learn from our brothers and sisters who show us what memorial can look like, what it should look like everywhere. In no different a way that we as Jews observe holidays and events together, no matter our location, today our Milwaukee community shares in somber grief for those who have lost their lives in Israel in the name of our Jewish freedom everywhere.
Shalom, my name is Matt Kleinman, and I am one of the co-chairs for this year's Yom HaZikaron committee. This year, as always, the Milwaukee Jewish community planned to come together to commemorate Yom HaZikaron, Israel's Memorial Day. Even apart, we will still stand together to remember the fallen in Israel. Thank you to our dedicated Yom HaZikaron committee members, Gail Adams, Bobby Rector, Joan Kazin, and Peter Klein, and the tireless work of the Milwaukee Jewish professionals, Uriah Roth, our community shliach, Rabbi Hannah Wallach, Zippy Altman Schaefer, Allison Hayden, and Mona Cohn.
Hello, my name is Gail Adams. I am co-chair with Matt Kleiman of this year's Yom HaZikaron ceremony. Our theme for this year's ceremony is IDF, Women in Combat. Our speakers today are two women who have served in combat units. Milwaukee's own Alexandra Hart will be sharing her story as a member of a co-ed combat unit, and Or Cohn, the first female commander in the Israeli Navy, who is now a shlicha in Rhode Island. We will also be honoring three brave women who gave their lives to defend the State of Israel. Please have a candle and matches ready so we may light together in remembrance at that point in the ceremony. We ask now that you please stand for Sfirah, the memorial siren in Israel that begins the commemoration of Yom HaZikaron, after which our community shaliach, Uriah Roth, will say a few words.
This year's Yom HaZikaron is not like any other Yom HaZikaron that I can recall. This year's Yom HaZikaron is different, but we are still here as a community and as a family. We are still here, remember. Israel is commemorating Yom HaZikaron like they've never done before, by staying home, by looking at their computers, looking at their screen, but they still remember. And I know that here in Milwaukee, next year, we will sit again next to each other at the JCC, and we will remember. We'll remember this year's ceremony, which was like nothing we've ever seen, and we'll always remember those who sacrificed all for the existence of the State of Israel. Thank you so much for joining us here tonight. Toda.
Eli, Eli, shelo yigamer leolam, hachol v'hayam, rish rush shel hamayim, berak hashamayim, tfilat ha'adam, hachol v'hayam, rish rosh shel hamayim, berak hashamayim, tfilat ha'adam.
The power of El Malei Rachamim is in its ability to connect what is above to what is below. It begins El Malei Rachamim Shochen Mamromim, God full of mercy who dwells above with the souls of those who have passed away. And right in the middle of the prayer, it mentions our ability to give tzedakah, charity, acts of kindness, to both honor the memory and show that those who passed away inspired us with their lives and their deeds. There are at least 22 known versions of the El Malei Rachamim, ranging from ones written for funerals to Yom HaShoah and the Crusades, and of course to one written for Yom HaZikaron. One of the earliest versions was in the 12th century in the Machzor Vitri, written by a student of Rashi, mentions that it was written for people who sacrificed and gave to the community, gave them Torah and money and of themselves. And few men and women have given more of themselves, including their lives, and the men and women who have defended and helped found the state of Israel, our homeland. And we can honor their memory both through this prayer and by doing good deeds in their name to show that their actions inspire us to this very day. Ad hayom hazeh.
El Malei Rachamim Shochen b'mramim Hamitzeh melucha nechona nechona תחת כנפי השכינה עם קדושים וטהורים כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים. לנשמות חיילי וחיילות צבא הגנה לישראל וכל יקירנו שהלכו לעולמם. בעל הרחמים הרחמים יסתירם בסתר כנפיו לעולמים. ויצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתם. אדוני הוא נחלתם וינוחו בשלום על משכבם. ונאמר אמן.
Don't let anyone define you or tell you what you can or cannot be. You're the only one who decides.
You have the power to change the world. You just have to believe that you can.
You are stronger than you think. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise.
We are strong, we are ambitious, we are unstoppable.
We aim to open more doors, more positions, and more opportunities for women in the IDF. The glass ceiling isn't the limit. We can smash through it and reach for the sky.
Do you think any of us would be where we are if we hadn't pushed the limit? Nothing should stand in the way.
Your success is determined by how much you want it. And if you want it badly, you're gonna get it.
Hello, my name is Shaked Ram, and I'm the Jewish Agency Israel Fellow at Hillel, Milwaukee. Between 2011 and 2013, I served in the IDF as a training commander at the logistics force. I had the honor and privilege to serve and protect my country. Please join me in lighting a candle in honor of the brave women who gave their lives defending the state of Israel. ולשם ולתפארת ולמדינת ישראל. Sergeant Hadar Cohen. Sergeant Hadar Cohen was born on September 3rd, 1997 in Or Yehuda, daughter of Sigalit and Ofer. In 2017, on Hadar's first day at the Damascus Gate, her team of border police approached two Palestinians who were acting suspiciously. As one officer examined their identification, one of the Palestinians pulled out a sharp blade and stabbed another officer. Hadar immediately neutralized one of the terrorists, while another officer took down the second one. But a third terrorist attacked Hadar from behind, taking her life. Another border policeman neutralized the third terrorist. Hadar was 19 years old. Sergeant Hadas Malka. Sergeant Hadas Malka was born on January 16, 1994, in Ashdod, daughter of Geula and David. Malka started her mandatory military service in the Navy, but later transferred to the border police, extending her mandatory service by 15 months in the process after deciding she wanted to protect Jerusalem. Malka died of stab wounds sustained in a terrorist attack on Friday evening in 2017 outside the old city of Jerusalem's Damascus Gate. She was 23 years old. May their memory be a blessing. Zichronan Livracha.
Hi, my name is Leah Robbins. I served in the IDF from 1977 to 1979 in the Shiryon, the Armored Corps. I was stationed in the headquarters of the Armored Corps of Israel. I'd like to tell you about First Sergeant Major Karen Tendler. First Sergeant Major Karen Tendler was born on September 26, 1979. She was the daughter of Anna and Don. Having made history as the first female flight mechanic in Israel's heavy transport helicopter fleet, she saw the war raging in Lebanon, and she, of all people, was being kept away from the enemy lines. After confronting her commanding officer, she was allowed to fly on a mission to Lebanon with her helicopter crew. Tendler was killed during the 2006 Second Lebanon War, along with 4 other crew members. She was 27 years old. She was the first female Israeli soldier to die on active duty. Tendler was the only female soldier killed in the Second Lebanon War. According to Israeli Defense Forces, between 1962 and today, there have been 535 female soldiers recognized as IDF fatalities. Added to the list during this past year was Hadar Cohen, a border police fighter who was posted at the Damascus Gate in Jerusalem before she had even completed her training and was shot and killed by terrorists last February.
We've all said the words, "I'd love to be a fly on the wall," to gain access to an otherwise inaccessible situation. Today's speaker, Debby Zimmelman, used her role as a professional photographer to make that happen. Debby was born in the United States and has lived in Israel for over 30 years. She's been a professional photographer for over 20 years. Her work has appeared in Oprah's O Magazine and other major publications in the United States and Europe. On behalf of Milwaukee's Jewish community, I'm pleased to welcome Debby Zimmelman to share her fascinating experiences as a photographer immersed in women's combat units in the IDF.
Imagine you could be a fly on the wall anywhere in the world. How many of you know what place you would choose? I was really looking forward to being with all of you tonight in Milwaukee in honor of Israel's Memorial Day. But as we know, sometimes things happen that are out of our control. Thank you so much for allowing me to share my book with you from the comfort and safety of my home in Modi'in. My name is Debby Zimmelman, and I've been a professional photographer for over 25 years. One of my favorite things is to use my camera to gain access to unique places that would otherwise be closed to me. I've had the privilege to do this twice in my professional career. The first time, I photographed inmates at Israel's only women's prison, Neve Tirza. These are a few of my favorite images from that project. Today I'm here to share with you my most recent experience as a fly on the wall, photographing young Israeli women who volunteer to serve in combat units in the Israeli army. I moved to Israel from Washington, D.C. when I was 22 years old and was considered too old to be drafted. After 35 years in Israel, my only regret is that I never had this experience. Several years ago, when my friends' daughters began to volunteer to serve in combat units, I thought here was my opportunity. Since I never had the opportunity to serve myself, I could photograph them in the Army. I went to meet with the spokesman's office and told him my amazing idea. I told him that I wanted to create a book about women serving in combat. Thankfully, they agreed to meet with me and didn't say no. But they did say that they would be willing to let me shoot one unit on the condition that I had a magazine willing to print the images. At the time, I'd been working with Hadassah magazine, whom I immediately called, and they agreed. Thankfully, the spokesman sent me off to photograph a unit called Magal, a combat support unit for women. So I'd like to share with you a few images from that shoot. I like to use people's own body language in my photos, and this is one of my favorite images of the unit. I asked the group of soldiers to stand at the entrance of the field base, however they wanted to. I love this photo because it really shows both their feminine side as well as their pride and strength as soldiers. The way they chose to stand is their own expression and far more powerful than any pose I could have created. A few weeks later, I joined them on a 12-kilometer nighttime march to mark the end of their training. Although I could have rode in the Jeep next to them, I preferred walking with the girls to get the best possible shots, including these. One of the secrets to getting strong photos is being with your subject for so long that you become part of the group. I met them at 3 o'clock in the morning. The fact that they thought I was crazy for waking up at 3 a.m. to voluntarily march with them gave me an in. It then took about 5 kilometers of walking in the pitch black to gain their trust. Once the sun started to rise and I had enough light to photograph, I felt like I had blended in with the group. They'd forgotten I was there and I could shoot whatever I wanted. The girls' parents met them at the end of the march and walked with them the last kilometer. After the story ran in Hadassah magazine, I really wanted to continue with the project and went back to the spokesman's office. He looked at the magazine, looked at me, looked back at the magazine, looked back at me, and said, okay. I was in. I was truly honored to be the first person ever to document the lives of combat female soldiers in the Israeli army. After that, I spent the next 2 years traveling around the country and photographing over 20 different units and interviewing almost all the women who I met. Their interviews are interspersed in the book. An army representative accompanied me everywhere, controlling whom and in which direction I could shoot. Sometimes I had 15 minutes for a shoot, and other times up to 24 hours. On occasion, I would drive 3 hours to get to a base, only to be told that the schedule had changed and I had 10 minutes with the girl who I thought that I would have several hours with. This was all part of the challenge in creating the book. Now I'd like to share with you the stories of the amazing women that I met and the interesting units that they volunteered to be in. The first unit I'd like to share with you is called Okez. This is Shir and her dog Aaron, stationed at the Chatzirim Air Force Base near Beersheba. Shir heard about this highly competitive unit during basic training. After a rigorous course where she learned to read a dog's cues, she was matched with Aaron, her Belgian-German Shepherd from Holland. Together they protect her army base from infiltrators. Unfortunately, most of the female soldiers on Shir's base were afraid of the dog and wouldn't let her room with them. Many times, she and her dog had to sleep in a room with male soldiers. The next unit is Karakal, which is the first male-female combat unit. They are responsible for guarding the border between Israel and Egypt. Liat chose this unit because she preferred to be outdoors rather than in an office, and liked the challenge of being in a mixed unit with boys. She shared that one of the highlights for her was catching smugglers with 900 packs of cigarettes and drugs. They caught and handcuffed the smugglers and put them in jail. They also witnessed refugees trying to escape from Sudan by crossing into Israel. Her unit was responsible for picking up the refugees once they crossed the border and to arrest them because they were entering Israel illegally. The refugees knew that they would not be hurt. At the time, after 3 weeks in jail, they would be free to go inside the country. For those of you who are wondering about relationships in a mixed unit, there were a lot of couples, lesbian and straight. Many young people were trying to figure out their own sexual identity. Anyone caught being part of a couple while on duty could be sent directly to Army jail. The next unit is the Navy. This is Or. Or chose to enlist in the Navy because she loves the sea. She was the first woman in the Navy to reach the rank of ship captain. Or was a professional swimmer prior to enlisting, loves extreme sports, and always knew she wanted to serve in a combat unit. She serves alongside men doing exactly the same job. At first it was challenging to be accepted by her male soldiers. As a captain, she feels like the parents of the soldiers during their service. Two of the challenges encountered in creating this book were to quickly connect with a soldier to make her feel comfortable and to figure out the best angle for shooting, particularly in the middle of the day when the sun is at its least complimentary for photography. Photographing ore at this Navy base is an example of this challenge. For security reasons, I was only allowed to shoot in one direction, with Haifa as the backdrop. In this case, I was given 10 minutes to shoot in the middle of the day under the harshest and least complimentary lighting conditions. Fortunately, the wind blew at exactly the right time, which combined with the colors of the flag and Or's outfit helped create a powerful photo. I consider this photograph a gift from nature, as sometimes happens in photography. The next unit is sports instructors. This is Tal and Lee. Tal is on the right and Lee on the left. Their job is to teach soldiers to get through the obstacle course in order to complete their basic training. Tal spent 3 months in a course to be a sports instructor and now trains combat soldiers, helping get them in shape. Lee made Aliyah from LA. Her friends thought she was crazy to join the army because she was very princessy, but her parents were very happy. She made Aliyah through Garin Sabar, which helps Americans join the army. She'd always wanted to be a sports instructor, but the Hebrew was so hard that she cried every day. Eventually, she learned enough Hebrew to try out for this job. Both girls were responsible for training and teaching the men to get through the mandatory obstacle course found on every army base. All combat soldiers have to get through the course in a given amount of time in order to complete their combat training. I love this photo because it tells the story of women in the army, the freedom to help each other through challenging situations. The next unit is search and rescue. These young women explained to me that their unit is unique because they both take lives as well as save lives. These young women learn to rescue people from fire, earthquakes, and undercollapsed buildings, both in Israel and abroad. One girl told me about her unit being rushed to a parking garage in Tel Aviv that had just collapsed. Everything they had trained for came together as they tried to rescue people whom she could hear trapped inside the rubble. The next unit is called Field Intelligence. This was the most fascinating unit for me, partially because I got to spend the most time with them, and also because I didn't know such a unit existed. This unit is located near Eilat. The girls couldn't believe that I came all the way from Modi'in, almost 4 hours away, so by the time I got there, they let me stay as long as I wanted to. This is the building where the girls slept at night. I was really excited because I got to spend part of the night in this dorm room with them as a fly on the wall, and the rest of the night out in the field. The soldier who accompanied me from the spokesman's office was not quite as excited about it. This was one of my roommates. One of the more scary experiences for me in this project was having to sleep on the top bunk of the bed that night. The beds are really high and very narrow. Being in the room with the girls was really cool, and listening to their conversations was fascinating. One girl was trying to figure out how to get out of the army. Another was crying because she had to leave her combat unit due to an injury. Each one with her own story, from varying backgrounds and socioeconomic levels, yet they all ended up in the same room for the night, along with me, the fly on the wall. It was fascinating to hear their advice to each other, their conversations, women from all over the country in varying backgrounds. The Field Intelligence Unit is primarily responsible for secretly watching our borders with Egypt and Jordan. Do you notice anything unusual about this picture? If you notice something in the bottom left corner, you're right. This is considered to be an artificial rock built by the young women where they would all spend the next 48 hours from which they observed the border. Once it was ready, all 11 girls, myself, and the Army rep got inside and had to stay for 48 hours. We brought everything we needed with us, and it was now all inside the rock. We were only allowed to go out at night, and the girls rotated between working, relaxing, and sleeping. This was a photographer's dream. I was stuck inside a rock for hours on end with 11 bored girls, and as the hours passed, they loosened up and again completely forgot I was there. It was fascinating to see how the unit operated, how close they were to one another, and supported each other like a second family. Eventually, silliness set in as they told stories, jokes, played word games, and did anything to avoid boredom. Particularly entertaining were the conversations about how to go to the bathroom privately inside this tiny space, and where to put the bag afterwards. It was so small that much of the time they were physically touching each other due to the cramped conditions. Also, they were all equally passive, no one person dominated, which probably contributed to the positive atmosphere inside. The last unit I wanted to share with you is called the Combat Medic. This is Noah on the right. I met Noah only after I'd completed the book, but because her story was so interesting, I felt like it was important to share it with you as well. Noah spent 3 years as a combat medic. As she tells it, ironically, she treated mostly Syrians during her service. At the time, due to the Syrian civil war, Syrians were flocking to the border crossing with Israel with severe injuries, and Israel accepted them for treatment. Noah's job was to sort them according to the level of injury before sending them off to the hospital in Sfat for treatment. As she described, who decided a 19-year-old should have such a big responsibility? But having trained so thoroughly, she felt she could handle it and spent her service treating hundreds of people and making life and death decisions. After her service, she was admitted to medical school in Beersheba, where she studies today. When I began working on the book, I was really curious to know what type of young women volunteered for combat service. By volunteering for combat, they were in for a longer and more challenging service. In spite of this, every year more and more young women are volunteering for combat. Once I finished the book, I understood that these women were incredible. They really wanted to give as much as possible to their country. They wanted to prove that they could do their job as well as boys could. Overall, I met the most inspiring, highly motivated, and proud young woman I'd ever met. I wondered about myself. If I had been 19 in their position, would I have been able to do what they were doing? I'm not sure. I learned a tremendous amount from the amazing young woman that I met. About life, about not giving up, about being taken out of your comfort zone and having no opportunity to quit, even if you want to. Many people think that when you send your kids to the army, they're going to suffer. I found that the opposite was actually true. Sure, they struggled, they were hungry sometimes, they didn't take a shower for 3 days, and they missed home. But ultimately, they gained amazing life skills that will benefit them throughout the rest of their lives. This is worth a tremendous amount. Just as I thought the young women that I met were totally amazing, they thought that what I was doing was amazing too. Just to sum up, I think this quote really summarizes the experience of many of the girls. Many of the women soldiers commented that the army was both difficult and empowering. Most were happy they had done it, but wouldn't want to do it again. This quote really sums up their experience. If you would like to hear the rest of the stories about the women who I photographed and to see the rest of the photos, please order my book. It's available on Amazon or through my website. Please allow 2 to 3 weeks for delivery. I just want to say thank you so much for listening, and I really hope that we all have a speedy and healthy recovery back to our normal lives.
שיר למעלות, אשא עיניי אל ההרים, מאין יבוא עזרי. עזרי מעמה שעושה שמיים בארץ, אל יתן למות רגליך, אל ינום שומרך. הנה לא ינום ולא ישן שומר ישראל, השם שומרך, השם צילך, על יד ימינך. יומם השמש לא יככה וירח בלילה, השם ישמורך מכל רע, ישמור את נפשך, השם ישמור צאתך ובואך מעתה ועד עולם, מעתה ועד עולם.
Our next speaker is Alex Hart. Alex grew up right here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. She attended Milwaukee Jewish Day School, where she first discovered her love and passion for Israel. It was during her 8th grade class trip when she realized that Israel was where she was meant to be. After starting high school at Nicolay, she applied to an international boarding school in Hod HaSharon through one of Na'aleh's Jewish high school in Israel programs. Alex's connection and love for the state of Israel continued to grow as she completed her last 3 years of high school there. She knew that she wanted to give and do as much as she possibly could. By her senior year in high school, she was determined to sign up for the IDF, Israel's army. After a year of fighting for her dream to be in a combat unit, she was ultimately accepted into a mixed boys and girls unit. She served there almost 3 years as a combat soldier. Today, she works for a security company in East Jerusalem. Welcome, Alex.
Hi, my name is Alex. I'm 23 years old, and this is my story. I grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I finished 10 years at MJDS and flew for the first time to Israel in early 2011, almost exactly 9 years ago, with my 8th grade class. I'd have to say that my love for Israel really started to bloom basically after all those years at school, but it all really came together when we flew together as a class. Being raised in the Thai Jewish community, Israel always felt important to me. I just was yet to realize how much. I always felt like I'd make Aliyah and join the IDF. I just thought that the move would come at a later age. After finishing at MJDS, I enrolled in Nicolay. There I started my freshman year. I have to say, it was all kind of confusing and overwhelming coming from a grade of 30 kids to a class basically that size. Somewhere throughout my freshman year, I felt lost, which makes sense for a teenager and for that time period. I started to look for myself and I just couldn't figure out where I belonged. I was doing everything a normal teenager my age would be doing, and still something always felt off. Then the opportunity of a lifetime was thrown at me. Through a friend of my mom, whose children already went through this program and loved it, I got to Na'aleh. This program is designed to inspire teenage kids to move to Israel to study in a boarding school for 3 years, with the hopes that they and their parents in the end will make Aliyah together. Looking back, it sounds so crazy to send a barely 16-year-old girl by herself to a foreign country without barely knowing the language and not knowing anyone there, and having no family there. But I guess at the time I felt that I had nothing to lose, seeing as how, if I were to be accepted, the program was free and I could leave at any time. So I applied. That summer was spent taking trips to New York and to Chicago for interviews and paperwork. By the end of the summer, I got my acceptance, and that's when I made my final decision. Had to at least give this all a try, again, feeling like this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I spent the rest of my high school years in that boarding school, coming home during breaks. I knew that I was going to make my decision at the end of high school. Stay and make Aliyah, which would be committing myself to all civil duties as an Israeli, which at the time meant drafting to the IDF, or go back to America and continue living my life as a young U.S. citizen. I knew that my decision would be to stay, make Aliyah, and eventually join the army. Being in a country with a requirement to serve, there are many options as to what kind of army service I could try to have. Anything from being in an office as an assistant to highly ranked officers, to engineers and doctors, to fighters on the field. In school, they took us to learn about the Army, and there are all these stations that each unit sends representatives to tell you a little bit more about the jobs they do, in hopes to excite you enough that you will try to draft to their unit. I know, this is sounding very Greek life. Anyways, I was trying to keep an open mind and learn as much as I could, ask as many questions as I could think of. And then we got to them, the Mixed Girls and Boys Combat Unit. And they bought me. They bought me with the ideas of equality. They bought me at the ideas of meaningful service. They bought me with the combat field fighters, and I knew. When I finally got drafted, I was nervous. I had no idea what was waiting for me, and my commanders proved to me that I really had no clue what I got myself into. 7 months of long, hard training filled with sleepless nights and really muddy boots, sore muscles, and a couple of scars. I finally finished my basic training. I went on to be a commander myself, and I served twice as a commander of 10 soldiers in different settings, once in operational line for around an 8-month period, and once in basic training. I was asked to talk about what it was like specifically to be a woman in combat. I think that any time a woman is put in a job that was initially designed for men, by men, it is never easy breaking down certain barriers. I don't know how ready Israeli society is for women having completely equal opportunity, and even though there have been women in combat situations since even before the country was established, I still very much felt a part of a revelation as far as women in combat jobs went, and maybe for equality in general. I think my job was not easy no matter what. Not sleeping enough, not eating enough, not spending enough time with my family and friends. But I think being a woman had a different aspect to it. I felt and still continue to feel like I must constantly prove my worthiness to my male counterparts. Constantly trying to prove that my sex doesn't define my ability to do my job. It meant always having to give 110% when my male counterparts could give 100%, so that I could prove I was equal and could do exactly the same things they did. It meant constantly being told that I do a pretty good job for a woman, or that it was impressive for a woman instead of just getting praise for being a soldier good at her job. It's constant doubt that because of my gender, there is no way that I could be just as good a fighter as the males in my units or other units. I was being told that my unit isn't a real combat unit because of the girls. It was having to tell boy draftees that they came to serve in a combat unit just like everyone else, and ensuring them that their service held just as much weight as every other combat unit in the IDF, and that them serving here was just as important. I was once told that no matter what situation, no matter who it was, all men would always be more competent in battle than any women. In the end, all of it was worth it though. I knew I was strong enough. I knew I had the tools and skills to fill my job properly. I knew I had what it takes to lead and teach new soldiers and build them so that they would have the strength and skills needed to perform their jobs properly regardless of their gender. I know the importance of continuing this fight against stigmas. I knew that every day I continued to do my job, wear my uniform, defend my country regardless, meant continuing to fight the fight for equality. I will never stop having pride for my service and in all the women just like me who continue on. Today I work for a security company in East Jerusalem, also in a predominantly male field, seeing as how the requirements are having served as a combat soldier in the Army. Today I continue facing these struggles as a woman in combat, being the first woman to work in the area I work for. Still fighting old ideas that it must be impossible for me as a woman to be able to do the same things as my coworkers. But I do believe things will change with time. Thank you for taking the time to hear and get to know my story.
מי שברך אבותינו, אברהם, יצחק ויעקב. הוא יברך את חיילי צבא ההגנה לישראל ואנשי כוחות הביטחון, העומדים על משמר ארצנו וערי אלוהינו, מגבול לבנון ועד מדבר מצרים, ומן הים הגדול עד לבוא הערבה, ובכל מקום שהם, ביבשה, באוויר ובים.
ייתן הקדוש ברוך הוא את אויבינו הקמים עלינו ניגפים לפניהם. הקדוש ברוך הוא ישמור ויציל את חיילינו מכל צרה וצוקה ומכל נגע ומחלה. וישלח ברכה והצלחה בכל מעשי ידיהם. ידבר שונאינו תחתיהם ויעטרם בכתר ישועה ובעטרת ניצחון. ויקוים בהם הכתוב, כי יד ה' אלוהיכם ההולך עמכם להילחם לכם עם אויביכם, להושיע אתכם ונאמר אמן.
O Lord, balevav penima
Nefesh Yehudi homiyah
Ulefatei Mizrach Kadima
Ayin Letzion Sophia
On lo avda tikvateinu
Hatikva bat shnot alpayim
Liyotam chofshi be'artzenu eretz Zion Yerushalayim
ליותם חופשי בארצנו ארץ ציון וירושלים.
Thank you so much for joining us here tonight. Thank you for those who help make this evening possible. So many people stepped in and helped us creating this virtual ceremony, and I want to thank each and every one of them. Please join us tomorrow and on Wednesday for special programs for Yom HaZikaron and Yom HaAtzmaut, and please join us on Sunday at noon for Shai Tabari's concert. If you want to join me in a few minutes at 7 p.m., I will be going live on Zoom for discussion, talking about our theme for tonight, Women on the Front Line, and maybe just have a little conversation face-to-face about what it means for you, Yom HaZikaron of 2020. Thank you and good night.